Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of your PCM hockey podcast. I am Payton, as today we got Mark Jones and Calvin Hector as my guests once again. It's pretty eventful. We haven't done a podcast in a little bit. We finished up school. I'm all done. I graduated, and same with my buddy Calvin. So now we're looking to get some jobs out there in the industry and have some fun and not have to deal with school anymore. I'll send this off to Kelvin right quick. How does it feel to be done school there, buddy?
It's good. Now I gotta deal with real life because school is school. You can study. You don't have to worry too much about finding a job and starting a
Yep.
career. But the page is turned, and now it's time to move on and find some good opportunities. Hopefully, they come easily.
Without a doubt. I'm hoping that as well. But Mark, how you doing, man?
Good, good. Well, congrats to both of you for finishing your studies, and yeah, on to a new chapter. And but yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I'll let you run with where you want to start with this because there's a lot of stuff hockey related.
Yeah, we haven't done a little podcast in a little bit, and there's been tons of drama, of course, with the North Division. Of course, the Edmonton Oilers clinched the playoff spot. The Calgary Flames most likely will not make it to the playoffs. I don't remember if they're mathematically eliminated or not. But Vancouver, they're still alive as well. And they do have a chance at making it, but they got to get some luck involved into that, and they practically have to have Montreal lose their next three games. They could win one of them, but they need them to lose those next three games in Vancouver to practically have a winning record to end off the season. So let's start off with the big news, though. Tom Wilson gets fined $5,000 a couple days ago, which then transpired into this game that was heated. Six fights to start off the game. It was basically a brawl, a line brawl to start off the game, which I have not seen since Calgary versus Vancouver when Torts was the coach for the Vancouver Canucks. And we've seen that heated brawl that night where also Tortorella went down and almost got in a fight with Bob Hartley. We almost had that again here with the Rangers and the with the Rangers and the Capitals. We seen both the GM and the president of the Rangers get fired after they sent out a response to Tom Wilson only getting a fine, saying that they should fire George Peros, which in return they fired them. It's been a crazy turn of events. Buchnevich got suspended for a cross check, which should have just been a fine. It was definitely a suspension worthy thing, without a doubt, but with the way that Wilson whipped around Panarin, that should have been suspension worthy as well. Tons of crap in this little piece of drama that ended in a brawl and ended up people calling the NHL a complete embarrassment, which we already know the NHL as this, but we'll send it over to Calvin on his expertise on this situation.
Well, this situation has dragged on for quite a few days. I mean, like you said, it started with the Tom Wilson incident, the first meeting between the Capitals and Rangers where this happened, and it escalated from there because, of course, the very next day, Rangers and Caps back at it again. And as you said, line brawls ensued. I knew stuff was gonna go.
Oh yeah.
So I made sure I was tuned into that game, and boy, was
Mm-hmm.
I not disappointed. 100 penalty minutes in the first period alone, and it
Oh,
didn't.
it was
There,
insane.
there, there were some guys that were getting 10-minute misconducts in the second, like Chara had to leave the game for a bit, and actually Wilson left the game that second game with an apparent upper body injury. And just speaking on Tom Wilson, the most latest news is actually from Wilson finally speaking out about the incident. And he said he's feeling fine. The reason he only left the game was because he had just a cut on his hand. And so I guess they told him because of that. Um, but what Wilson said is he said it just seemed to him like a routine hockey scrum, and that he just didn't think it was that much extra. So he's fine with the $5,000 fine. I think if he got suspended, I think that was more just because of his history, his background of suspensions, and so people were like calling for his head. Yeah, it was a little over the top. You don't like to take a guy that's already down and start smashing his head in the ice, but I mean, it wasn't like the Bertuzzi incident from way back in the day where literally guys skating and all of a sudden gets jumped on and smashed right face first in the ice. Like, I mean, they were already kind of wrestling on the ice. So yeah, the extra shoves are not ideal, but I don't think it is as outrageous as people made it out to be. And then it snowballed from there and just became a huge situation when the Rangers spoke out about their dismay and how George Peros didn't handle it well. He should have been fired. And then they get fined $250,000 from the league. That's so
Bad
much.
as well.
We could only dream of having $250,000 in our pocket. And the Rangers was like, you know what, Rangers? We don't like you speaking out about us like that. So you can give us $250,000.
And then fire your GM and president.
Well, I don't think that was an NHL directive. I think
No, I don't know either. I know James Dolan was saying that it wasn't, but it kind of just, the conspiracies were going wild on Twitter saying that that might have been the cause for firing the GM and president. But I heard the GM and president actually had no idea that the Rangers were going to actually release that form, from what I heard, from reports that I heard.
It's a whole mess. I mean, I don't think it'll go away. I think it'll still be talked about for another week or so. Like, it's not gonna, because there's gonna be lots of talk about this, about how the league handles their stuff now. And anyways, yeah, that's my take on it. I think Wilson should have been suspended one game just so it didn't escalate as much as it did in that second game. Like, if say the Capitals and Rangers weren't playing again the next night, the $5,000 fine fitting, fine him, because that's the max you can under the NHL bargaining agreement. But they should have suspended him a game, because look what happened. Like 6 fights in the first 5 minutes. It's just that it's old time hockey. I like it, but I mean, that mess could have easily been prevented.
Yeah, and I think there should have been like a suspension handed out. We got to talk a little bit about the Panarin whipping around too, because it wasn't, he got suspended for the Buchnevich incident, not suspended but fined. But then he goes ahead and of course whips around Panarin recklessly when Panarin really wasn't doing anything in general. And now he's injured for the rest of the season. So I think they would have to take that into account as well. I think he should have been suspended a couple games, especially including his history. They should have, give him a bit of suspension, especially going up against the Rangers the next night. It could have been, avoided, but who cares? We got to see tons of fights, which I don't know what the NHL initiative is. Either they're trying to keep fights in the game or they're trying to take it out. You never really know. But for this one, I feel like the NHL wanted this to happen. They wanted this kind of big ticket driver, this big viewer driver into this big game between the Caps and the Rangers. And it did. A lot of people tuned in for that game. Twitter was all over the Capitals Rangers game all day long. So I'll send this one over to Mark on his opinion on it.
Well, there's a few things. I mean, good thoughts from Calvin there and yourself, Payton. I think first of all, in no particular order, the Panarin part of it is, I think, what leaves a lot of people leaving something to be desired, because they didn't. There's nothing, even in Paros's, how do you say his name? Peros?
Yeah, George Peros.
His, the whole thing about our decision was blah, blah, blah. It makes no mention about the Panarin situation. Zero. So first of all, I think just by omission, by their silence, that just glares. Like, what were they thinking? The term that's being used is the ragdolling of him. I mean, how is that allowed? And I mean, fair point that Calvin makes. Okay, it's one thing for it to happen, but to go back about, okay, with the incident where the fine comes in, it's okay. Yeah, maybe it's not as bad as the Steve Moore situation, but the optics of it are the same, because to go back, we're sort of bouncing back and forth, but that one thing led to the other, led to the Panarin. Panarin gets injured, now out of play. If you want to take it back, the old history, I mean, 15 plus years ago, when it was Naslund who got injured, I guess, if I'm trying to recall off the top of my head, the incident that eventually led to the retaliation against Moore. And, there was a fight, and then Bertuzzi tried to go after Moore again. And yeah, I'm not condoning what Bertuzzi did, but to bring it back to this, Panarin now is injured. There's no
Mhm.
suspension. And then to take it to the next step, and the parallel that's being drawn to, if you follow me along here, when we talk about, I thought too about how the brawl right off a second in on Saturday Night Hockey Night in Canada in 2014, Calgary, Vancouver. The situation there, though, was Bob Hartley decided to dress, a lineup
Mhm.
for the visiting team. So, of course, what's Tortorella going to do? He had to dress. I mean, he had the last, decision on the lineup. What's he going to do? Is he going to put the Sedins out against them? In this case, it was basically a situation again, I guess, where Washington. I think the Rangers dressed well. I think the Rangers matched their lineup. It would have been the same thing though. The Rangers would have had the last call. So, but I think again, it was Washington to put up a bunch of fourth liners. So, it's a question of, okay, well, what are you going to do? They did that because they probably assumed, okay, well, we put out our best players, and then the Rangers put out as the last change their fourth liners. So it's similar, but it's different kind of things, because this one there was no reason with Hartley to do all that, from what I recall, just other than to try to stir it up on a Saturday night. But we bring it back to this. I think it's disgraceful. Because I know we'll get to it down the road in sort of a linked discussion here tonight, or in this podcast. But it's all over the map. The disciplinary actions, because there have been subsequent things that have gone on unrelated to Washington and New York now that just make me shake my head. It just seems to be the optics don't look good. It seems to be that there are a lot of things that are being done that one would have to wonder. It's like, what are they using? There's no consistency to what they decide on. And they don't want to be accountable, it seems, in terms of how they make their decisions. So that's my sort of broad take on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a bit of a gong show. I mean, thankfully we didn't have the same situation that we had with Bertuzzi, with punching that guy and doing what he did. It was a messed up situation, and I think the NHL could have handled it a lot better. I think player safety, NHL has not really handled player safety very well this year, nor the last couple of years. I've really not liked how Peros has done his job as, player safety guy, the director there. I think it could be a lot better. I hope it does, but Peros is not the guy to hire as your director of player safety. The guy was a buffoon out on the ice. I never really liked the guy, and when I heard he was player safety, I kind of just turned my head. It was not the greatest hiring in the world. I'm not the biggest fan of George Peros and the way that he's done things with suspensions and fines. I think it's kind of a complete joke how he's handled everything, but we'll move on. As we are going to be having a little bit of a shorter podcast today in the next couple episodes, as well as because I have really bad internet here in my small little town. So we're going to be jumping on to the teams of the Flames, Canucks, and the Oilers. We're going to be giving up a little bit of a wrap up here for the teams. We're almost done the seasons. We're almost, I know the Oilers are 4 games away from the end of the season. Calgary is, I think, just under 5 games left for them as well, and then 8 for Vancouver, because as we all know, they missed out a couple weeks there due to COVID. So we'll jump this over to Mark. And Mark, do you think the Canucks are going to make it to the playoffs?
I'm going to say realistically, I mean, as much as I'm a long time suffering Canucks fan, I'm going to say no. And I would love to be proven wrong, but the odds now are just too astronomical. I mean, looking at the numbers, and one thing I don't know how. I'm just looking at for example, in standings in the North, and I'll bring it back to Vancouver. But so Winnipeg is clinched, and I'm assuming 59 points is not enough in itself. It must be the wins or the regulation wins. And I'm just trying to, as we do this, trying to look here, trying to see the regulation wins for Winnipeg are 22. And I'm just trying to see at 59 points, they've clinched. So that means there must be no way that Calgary I'm a little bit puzzled. I guess because Calgary. Oh no, because Calgary. How many games have they got less? They got. Oh, they can only get to 57. That's why. Okay, so that's why they've clinched because Calgary can only get to 57. So it means either Calgary catches Montreal or Vancouver catches Montreal, or it's Montreal that's in. So I just answered my own question there. So
Yeah,
to bring
because Vancouver can only have 59 points. That's the max that they could have. I think I just did the math quickly. But if they win every single game, they could get up to 59 points. So basically, you're hoping Montreal doesn't win any of these next 3 games,
Yeah.
as they have one against Toronto and 2 against Edmonton, and they've been doing really good against the Edmonton Oilers this year. So it is going to be a big weekend for the Vancouver Canucks fans.
Where I was going with that is I was just trying to figure it out, and that could be something, somebody we could figure it out at some other point, and it's a moot point. I was just trying to figure out how does Winnipeg, how are they guaranteed? I'm assuming it's because there aren't two teams.
Regulation wins over overtime wins.
Well, yeah, but just looking at it, it's we could talk about this off air. It's something. It's a moot point. I can see why it is. There aren't two teams that can get to 59, so Winnipeg's got it. They're already there. And I mean, if Montreal can get 3 points out of this, there's absolutely no way Vancouver can get a maximum now of they can get to 59 points max. If Montreal can get 3 points out of their last 3 games, they're in. It's done. It's over. Mm-hmm. So I just don't see Vancouver. Vancouver would have to run the table here, get to, well, realistically, they have to get to 59. They have to run the table. They certainly have to get 7. They have to tie Montreal and hope Montreal doesn't do it. So they could maybe do it without looking at all the tiebreakers. 7 out of their 8 remaining games and win it. Calgary, the best they could do is tie Montreal. And I that's where I think it's going to be, for both either Calgary or Vancouver. Ottawa's out mathematically. So Vancouver and Calgary, it's a long shot. And maybe I'm a bit biased. Vancouver has a little bit of a better chance, but I still don't think they're going to do it. It's just, I just can't see it. I mean, could it happen? Yeah, but so Montreal is probably, if I were going to bet any money, I would say it's Montreal gets the 4th spot. Mm-hmm. And then, ironically, look at how far they dropped, because I had some loyal Montreal fans earlier in the season sending me screenshots and laughing, oh, look at where they were in the league, and they were up at the top and that. But once the playoffs start, it's going to be a whole, everything else doesn't matter. But I will just add that, sorry, Calvin, but it's basically gone as I thought it would. The bottom 3 teams in the division, well, 2 of the 3 bottom ones, I figured somehow Calgary and Ottawa would not make it. They were going to hitch their cart in Calgary too much to March. Vancouver, I really, and give credit to Patrick Johnston, who I had on the hockey report on in my other life was on PCM, which I recorded a feature with. He's a province newspaper writer out of Vancouver, covers the Canucks, and he said, yeah, he was a little bit surprised that Vancouver did as poorly as they did out of the gate, but the problem was the defense, and all those losses earlier in the season, that's going to be a big part of what their downfall was. And so I don't think they'll do it. I hope I'm wrong. And onwards we go. It's just, it's another chapter. Vancouver has missed the playoffs now. I think it's 5 of their last 7, and certainly had regression this year that I did not expect. I thought Toronto, it would be a whole lot of, more expectations that didn't come through. Well, they've made it to the playoffs, but now they've got to actually do something in the playoffs. But we'll leave that for another time. But Vancouver, nope, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it's definitely a far fetch, and I mean, one quick question for you too, just a quick one. How much have the Vancouver Canucks missed Pettersson this year? I know not having him in the lineup for majority of this season. Do you think if Pettersson was in the lineup, do you think the Vancouver Canucks would be playing 100, like a better game than what they played this year?
I think Pettersson's good for, if we look, I don't know how many they've lost in that time, but certainly even over the last 6 games. And if you go back, I mean, I think Pettersson, even conservatively, meaning very, on the low side, it's at probably another 4 wins, collectively with his effort, another 4 wins for Vancouver, take away 4. So with that, I mean, they're then probably still in the hunt a lot closer. They're probably still within 2 or 3 points of Montreal. At least, I mean, maybe, you flip it all around. Maybe they've actually, I don't know if there were a couple games in there where they played Montreal without him, but you add it all up. I think Vancouver would not be sitting 14 points out of the playoffs right now. They would probably more be within maybe they would be 5 points out of the playoffs. So clearly it's been a loss. And also, like I say, that's one part of it. And also all the damage early in the season where they were losing, they had that ridiculous start with so many games being played, more quantity of games versus other teams in the division. There was all the other teams had consistently 4 or 5 games in hand on Vancouver. And that horrible start that Vancouver had where they were getting blown out. If I recall, it was in Montreal. I think they won 1 or 4 or 5 games against Montreal early in the season, and then Toronto was in there. We're just getting blown out, and Pettersson was there, but that was a lot of issues too. But certainly, once the team got its footing, and then they lost Pettersson, that was just another, speed bump that they had to try to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of speed bumps, lots of troubles there in Vancouver this year, and they're only going to keep having more troubles as Pettersson and Quinn Hughes are both qualifying free agents this year, so they are RFAs, so they still have those rights. That's good. You won't have to lose them, but it's going to be a tough offseason there for Benning, the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll head over to the Calgary Flames there. We haven't done a podcast since trade deadline, so we have not been able to talk about Sam Bennett and his absolute tear there in Florida right now. One of the best free agent or trade deadline acquisitions, 13 points in 9 games. He's been playing amazing, and he's actually showing if you give him that amount of ice time that he deserves, he will excel. And especially in a system like Florida, he just seems to be fitting right in. And I'll send it over to Calvin on his opinion on Sam Bennett and just the Calgary Flames in general. Take it over.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He's producing really well in Florida, and I think that's just the quality of the team they have in Florida. They weren't necessarily struggling through this season like the Flames were. Bennett was up and down the Flames lineup, getting placed in different positions. He was all over the place, different kinds of ice time. He wasn't getting anything consistent. And I think with that trade to Florida, now Florida knows exactly what they want to do with Bennett. And now that he's getting that consistent time there and knowing what his role is, it's really helping him with fitting into the team mold. And that's why he's doing so well. It sucks to see because, of course, as a Flames fan, you wanted him to pan out in Calgary. He was their highest ever draft pick. So much promise in this guy. And, of course, it just didn't work. He just wasn't the right fit, and they couldn't find where he worked best. And it's sad to see him go. I mean, hopefully with the draft pick we got in trading for him, we'll see where things go with that. But I mean, it's a long shot, right? Especially when you're getting a draft pick. You never know. Could be a diamond in the rough, but that's a 1 in a million shot. But good on Sam Bennett. But now I'm going to flip to the Flames. I think they've been really, really disappointing down this final stretch here. I mean, things down the final stretch have been kind of a crapshoot for the Flames. Their destiny, they needed to win a lot of games down this final stretch, and they haven't been able to do it. It's kind of like the broken record of all season. As soon as they start winning a few games when it matters, then they start losing the biggest games that they need to end up getting points out of. And it's pretty much a situation right now where, I mean, Montreal only has to get a single point to clinch for playoffs. So, and they only have 3 games left, granted. So, I mean, fate really is in Calgary's hands. We need to win out. So we got 5 games remaining. Hold on a second. I'm going to check.
5 games
so we got 5 games remaining. Calgary has to win all 5 in regulation.
A lot of Vancouver ones.
Okay, sorry. We don't have to win all in regulation, but I think we have to win at least 4 of the 5 in regulation to have the first tiebreaker against Montreal. So that means the Flames really need to hunker down, and they're just stuck scoreboard watching. They need to win, and Montreal needs to lose their last 3. That's the only way Flames get in the playoffs. They will tie Montreal in points, but I believe if the Flames are able to get 4 out of the 5 games in regulation and get the full point spread out of that, then they will have the first two tiebreakers, so it won't matter because the first tiebreaker would be what they look at, and the Flames would have that, which is who has more wins in regulation. So the Flames do win out for the rest of the season. They'll end up with 28 wins. If Montreal happens to lose the rest of the game, they only have 24, so that's a big spread there. So actually, I think the Flames have more room to end up going to overtime, but they do need the full 2 points, and they need Montreal to lose out. I don't think it's going to happen. Just the way the Flames season has been going. I mean, they've had so many opportunities to try and gain ground, and then, of course, they blow it. So, I've kind of written it off. The only thing is, with this roster right now, they're putting the regulars in still. We have 5 games left. Playoff hopes are, not there. And we're still putting our regulars in. I want to see some young guys. I want to see what our future holds for us, because that's going to be a big tell for what's going to happen in the offseason. It's really interesting to me because I know for a fact the Flames are going to make at least one big move. I mean, you can quote me on this later if we do a podcast in the summer during free agency, whatever. But after the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Flames are going to do something. And it's definitely going to lie in Gaudreau or Monahan. I think the Flames could get the most out of trading Gaudreau for what they can get in return, because Gaudreau's been playing pretty well down the stretch. Of course, the Flames are winning, but Gaudreau's had some decent numbers down the stretch. So that's good for the Flames, especially in trade stock value. At least showing Gaudreau still has promise, and if he gets the right fit on a team, he could be once again close to 90 points in a season. I don't think that Gaudreau is completely gone. I just think it's kind of been he's in the same, he's part of this Calgary core, and this Calgary core has gotten so predictable that it's teams don't need to do much research on how to shut it down. And that's been their biggest issue. They don't come at you differently. They're so predictable. And that's been a huge issue in my eyes with the team. Just the way they've been playing is their predictability. Now, like I said, if Gaudreau gets moved, yeah, I'll be upset. I mean, he has been one of the Flames' better players, and especially he's close to getting 20 goals this year. I think he's at 18 or 19 goals. So he's got a lot of room to get that 20-goal marquee for a shortened season, which isn't horrible. I mean, out of Gaudreau, you'd probably expect more 30, 40 goals, but, to hit 20 goals a season, that's not horrible. That's decent, second, third line numbers. But I don't think the Flames really have a chance of making the playoffs. I think Montreal, they're well off enough that they can win at least one of these 3 games, or even get a point. Send it to overtime. That's all they got to do. They just got to grind it out and get 1 point, and they clinch. Does that fare well for them in the playoffs? I don't know, because Carey Price has been out for so long, so that's a wild card. Because Carey Price comes back,
and then Gallagher's been out of the lineup too. I don't know if he's going to be returning back in.
Come playoff time and surprise everyone and be the team they were at the start of the season and just have all this energy and just start shocking people. And that might be a hard thing for Toronto to try and defend, especially with their goaltending issues right now. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'll probably watch at least the North Division playoffs for sure. But yeah, I think the Flames are basically a write-off. They don't really they haven't shown me anything that would lead me to believe they're going to win their next 5 games, and Montreal has shown enough that I definitely think they're going to get at least a point in their next 3.
Well, now we'll change the sides from two failure teams this year to a pretty successful one in the Edmonton Oilers, who are right now in second place in the division, clinched I think the second place divisional spot. I think we have to win one more game and then we clinch it, but we're 2 points away from clinching it. So I'm pretty confident we should be getting home ice advantage going into the first round, which will be really nice, going up against either the Winnipeg Jets or the Montreal Canadiens, which I am hoping is the Winnipeg Jets, because the Montreal Canadiens have seemed to just been able to figure out Connor McDavid all season long. But we got tons of good stuff to talk about. McDavid is just a couple points away from hitting 100 points in just I think in the 56 game schedule. Right now he's at what type of games are we at right now for the Oilers? 52. So in 52 games, he's had 96 points this season, which is just absolutely insane for the man Connor McDavid, and not even the doubt Leon Draisaitl. Leon Draisaitl has been insane this year too. In 52 games, he's had 77 points, as well as our two top gunners in McDavid and Draisaitl have been absolutely nuts this year. And especially even Jesse Puljujarvi, who has been really sparking a flame in these last couple games. And honestly, the others have been doing really well. We've been shutting down the Winnipeg Jets. We were able to beat the Montreal Canadiens. We've been doing really well last month, and even coming into this month, I've been feeling that the Edmonton Oilers have been a very strong team. Dmitry Kulikov has been a great pickup for the Edmonton Oilers, and things seem to be going pretty well right now. Of course, there's some dumb stuff that Dave Tippett's doing right now, but I feel like he's just trying to figure out the lineups to figure out what we're going to be doing next for the team going into the playoffs, because we're seeing a bunch of players jump into the lineup like Neil and Chase on. We seen Russell the other night in the lineup. Bouchard played one of his best games of the year, I feel. He was in the lineup a little bit. Legason got in. So we've been seeing tons of guys jumping in and out of the lineup. I need Tippett to keep playing Tyler Ennis, though. I don't understand why Tippett keeps benching Tyler Ennis when, honestly, he's one of our best, depth goal scoring piece. I know he only has 9 points on the year, but when you look at everyone else, your other best depth goal scoring piece is Tyler Ennis, especially for even strength this year. But the Edmonton Oilers need to get their stuff in gear. Tippett needs to figure out what he wants to do with these lineups. I'm not a huge fan of them. I'm hoping that they can figure them out, here soon, especially going into the playoffs. And also Mika Koskinen had a really rough game the other night. 4 goals and 4 shots. Now, do not worry, Edmonton Oilers fans. It's only one bad game. Koskinen has been terrific. The previous 5, he's been absolutely amazing for the Edmonton Oilers. So I would not worry about this game that Mika Koskinen had. It was a rough one. It definitely wasn't a beautiful one. He broke a record that hasn't been broken since like the late 70s, I think, somewhere around there. But I'm excited for the Oilers playoff hockey. It should be a lot of fun, either going up against the Jets or the Canadiens. I'm just excited to see some playoff hockey. But that is all the time we have here on the PCM Hockey Podcast. Thank you very much for joining into today's episode. Thank you very much to Calvin and Mark, which we'll get our last thoughts out here on the pod. I'll start it off with Calvin on his last thoughts.
Well, actually, one thing we didn't even touch on, and I'll leave this as my final thought, was about the U18s that went on out in Texas.
Oh, yes.
Winning gold. They were just unreal to watch, especially Connor Bedard, like a 16-year-old, just lighting the lamp the way he did. And then I'm good. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Russian guy's name because I know
Mateev Michkov.
Yeah, like unreal, and how these guys, again, a Canadian and a Russian, just like Ovechkin, Crosby, they're in the same draft class in 2023. So, I mean, part of me wants the Flames to do something great in the offseason because I know they're not making the playoffs this year, and hopefully be more of a cup contender next year, especially how we have Markstrom locked up for so long. But hey, will I be sad if 2022 the Flames are a basement dweller and have...
No, he's in 2023. 2022 is Shane Wright. That was the other kid that was playing in the juniors.
2022 season, if the Flames tank, then they could get the first overall pick in 2023. So that's why I'm like, okay, so maybe, or sorry, never mind. What am I talking about? It'd be at the end of the 2023 season. My bad.
2023 is Bedard and Michkov.
Okay. That's my bad. But yeah, if the Flames somehow tank that year and then finish in the bottom 3 or 4 teams, I won't be sad because that is some talent for a 16-year-old to carry a U18 team like that. And especially the numbers he posts in the Western Hockey League for the Regina Pats, just insane. So that was awesome to watch, and that'll be what I'll leave the podcast with for this week.
Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. Connor Bedard, he's like a 15-year-old, but he's looking like an adult out there with the way he shoots, the way he plays. Just an amazing player. And congrats to those young guys. The first gold in the U18 since 2013 for Team Canada. So that was great for the boys to go out there and get that one. We'll send over to Mark on his last thoughts. Take it over.
Yeah, I'll have to make it really quick because, the Zach McEwen thing, we didn't get to touch on that. but that's okay. I'm just going to say, you know what? In all fairness, full disclosure, I did not get to see the hit. I'm going to take it that it was a bad hit. I think it's just, or the knee or whatever it was. The fact of the matter is, though, it's the optics. And this is the problem of, okay, they're two independent incidents, but the Tom Wilson thing, everything that's going to be a benchmark always, that everything's going to go back. Now, there would be, it's one of these things, I think it's been very rare, if ever, that they'll come out, whoever it is, player safety, and say, you know what, maybe we should have done something differently, but we can't do anything about it now. Like, the fact of the matter is that Wilson thing, if the knee deserves something, the Canuck player does, and I don't care if it's a Canuck player or any other team player does the same thing. If they deserve something, then the Wilson thing, the ragdolling on Panarin deserves something. But unfortunately, it's one of those things, and there's been numerous incidents, and this is every time the NHL has a bad look like this. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. 2011 Stanley Cup Final. There is just so many incidents there that there is no good objective reason why certain things were allowed to go, just like this Panarin thing. So the McEwen thing, just let it go. And it's probably just as well. As funny as we're talking, I see somebody saying something on Twitter, if I could find the tweet. They're saying, here it is. I'll give credit where it is. Taj, TAJ1944 said last night, NHL player safety isn't ready for Canucks Twitter if they suspend McEwen for that. Wilson backlash is going to seem like nothing. I just saw that and I thought, okay, well, that's fine. The fact of the matter is that, you know what, let it go, because, do the crime, you do the time, and it's like, okay, then just let it go. But that Wilson thing in juxtaposition is going to, I hope, it doesn't haunt them in a bad way, but it's a bad look. Like, it's a bad look on the NHL, how that was handled. And I agree with your comment earlier. Peros should not be in there. They should have somebody. This is a comment that was made out on Twitter, and I'll leave it at this. Somebody said somebody like a Steve Moore, and this is not meant to be funny, I'm being serious, who's seen the literal and the physical damage of bad decisions being made, or however you want to call it. They should be someone like that can empathize and be in a situation where they're going to make tough decisions. And Peros, in my opinion, did not make a tough decision, and he should have come down tougher there. So that's my thought. Sorry if it went a little bit longer than I intended.
No worries. Yeah, on that Zach McEwen one, it was just a little need to the head of Darnell Nurse, because Darnell Nurse did come and hit him pretty hard there, and then once Darnell Nurse, of course, fell, McEwen wouldn't need him. Definitely a suspension-worthy thing, like especially the new camera angle that we did see. It's definitely suspension-worthy. When you look at the Tom Wilson compared to that one, without a doubt, Wilson should be suspended, but it is what it is. The NHL player safety is weird and confusing. We can complain about it all we want, but the best thing to do is just to move on and not look at it, I guess. I mean, sooner or later, the NHL will figure out something. The backlash will get to them, and they'll have to change up something in their department. But hopefully it happens sooner rather than later, and we can get George Peros out of there. But thank you very much for tuning into episode 11 of the PCM Hockey Podcast. Make sure to slap that subscribe button and hit that like button as well, and we'll see you guys all later. Adios, amigo.